Good afternoon, Wear Many Hats listeners. It's me, Mark Robinson, with another episode of the podcast. Today, I am really excited to be joined by a gentleman who's operated within the space for a significant number of years. It's an absolute pleasure to introduce Mark Tyson, the Head of Asset Services for Legal & General Elgin. How you going, Mark? You all right?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, it's an absolute pleasure. Did you get here all right?
Yeah, fine. Bit wet today. Which,
yeah, no, it's not nice,
so fun, is it? But yeah.
It's a bit warm as well, though, isn't it? You don't know how to dress.
Yeah, it's nicer than it was a few weeks ago where it was a bit too chilly, wasn't it? But
yeah, it was a bit Baltic, to be fair. Have you come far then? Did you work local to where we are?
So the office is near Moorgate, Coleman Street. So nice and easy.
Nice and easy for you.
We have properties around this sort of way as well.
Yeah. So do you work out of multiple properties generally? Are you quite mobile?
I'm probably in the office in Coleman Street most of the time, sort of three days a week. And then somewhere around the country, because it's a UK portfolio.
Yes.
And my job, I think, is to go out and immerse myself in it, speak to people.
Yeah.
And so on. But yeah, I really don't like working from home.
No.
So you won't see me at home on a Teams call or whatever. Generally, either in the office or out and about in our portfolio somewhere.
That's because we've both got 3 kids, Mark.
Yeah. COVID was entertaining from that perspective, but I very much need a work-life split.
Yes. Yes.
And I enjoy the commute as well.
Do you?
I love the commute, yeah.
Oh, most people don't say that.
No,
where do you commute from?
Wandsworth. I live in Alsfield.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I get 12 minutes into Waterloo, and then Waterloo and City Line, and a walkie for side. So it's just a chance to clear my head.
Yeah.
Do a couple of emails if I want to, read the paper.
Get ready for the day.
And then on the other side, coming back into family life.
You can download before you get home.
It's important. In COVID, I think there's little things like that people miss, was that going from very highly pressured situations at work to the other side of the door was a highly pressurised situation for a different reason.
That's actually I've never thought about it like that, but you're correct. Yeah. You wouldn't have that in-between part where you could compartmentalize the day, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, like when early part of my career, I couldn't switch off.
Right.
Like, and I always found my brain was racing at weekends and
you just dream about work.
And you have to learn. You have to learn how to switch off. And I think having a family does help with that.
That's true.
But having that separation between being at home with the family and being at work and in work, I think is important.
Yeah.
And COVID just blurred the lines.
No, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. Okay, brilliant. Well, listen, I always like to start with a really easy question. So why don't you walk us through your career, how you got into the industry, how long you've been in the industry, and what you've enjoyed. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's people always say they fell into facilities management or property.
Yeah.
I would say I wasn't really aware of it, but I wanted to learn some skills. So my first job actually was a graduate scheme for an IT company.
Right.
So more of a marketing/project management job.
Okay.
It was good. I enjoyed it, and
was that post uni then?
Post uni. So I did a business management degree, University of Essex.
Okay. So that would have obviously helped leading into.
Yeah, I mean, I always set out to be a generalist.
Yeah.
So my career is about general management. How do I get to run businesses? Was my sort of plan from 14, 15.
Right. Okay.
And I don't really know. Yeah, but then I haven't planned jobs. I've very much been, and I generally don't know who told me this, but it's something I've very much stuck to, is learn skills and experience, and then stitch it all together. So my first plan was to do a graduate scheme because it was like fun, good way to experience a business.
Yeah, yeah.
So I applied to loads.
Right.
And then Northgate took me on as a cohort of about 8 grads, and we had an amazing experience. Like the access to senior management, some of the training and management development, which I can still remember now.
Is that Northgate Vehicle Hire?
No, Northgate Information Solutions they were called. I think they're called Northgate Arinzo now. Yeah, so they used to do payroll solutions.
Right.
And the bit I was in was public sector technology. So it was actually what they were called blue lights services. So like all the software that runs 999 calls.
That must have been quite interesting.
Yeah, and actually one of the things that drew me to it, sadly, was there was the Soham murders. I remember there was a Bishar report where none of the police forces shared information.
Yes.
So Northgate were one of the main companies that were developing technology solutions around
to bring all those databases together. Right.
So when I was looking at jobs, I was thinking that's quite an interesting, worthy sort of thing to get involved in, and it was really interesting. But I, after about 2.5 years, I sort of realised I wanted to manage people. Yeah. Marketing probably wasn't going to be my long-term thing. It was a skill I'd sort of learned, but I wanted to go in and sort of manage people. Strangely, in my head before before I had kids and stuff. I didn't really have that on the agenda. I was only 23, but I was very much thinking that there's certain skills that's easier to learn, but you don't get paid that much, and you haven't got the stress of family.
Yeah, agreed.
So I saw an advert in the Times actually.
Right.
This is a funny little story.
Back in the days when you used to advertise in newspapers.
The Times used to have that really good career section.
Yeah, did you?
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
it was
I
awesome.
do, yeah.
And there was this full page spread without a logo on it.
Right.
And it was like, are you the next like big general manager? Do you want to manage lots of people, quickly learn P&L?
Yeah.
Like, and all this. I was like, oh yeah, this is written for me.
This is me, yeah.
2 years out of university, they didn't want first jobbers, they wanted like second jobbers. I was like, this is me.
Right.
So I took a day's leave, went up to, actually it was Northampton, and sat in this room with about 20 other people.
Yeah.
And I was like, who is this company? Why is there all this mystery?
Yeah.
And so the guy stood up and he goes, now the reason we haven't told you who we are is I want you to be honest, put your hand up if you would still have come.
Right.
When we show you the logo.
Yeah,
so he flicks to the next slide. It's Reliance Security.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, why have I taken a day's leave for this? Like, quite snobby.
Yeah.
And he was like, look, listen for half an hour. If you want, then leave. Otherwise, go forward. And he was like, look, not many people at your age will give you this level of responsibility. They were sort of pegging themselves like a little Audi scheme. Where you get responsibility quick.
Yeah.
And all that sort of stuff. And I was like, do you know what? That's really interesting. So get big team, customer exposure.
Yeah.
And there was what I was looking for. So going back to that skills acquisition, how do I get managing big teams experience?
Yeah. So you were managing security officers then?
I was. I had 130 in Essex, yeah.
At 23?
At 23, yeah.
I bet that was an interesting.
Awful. Yeah. To make it even more fun, Mark, when I came on in this management development program, I was like, put me in the worst centre. I don't know why I said that.
No.
And this was back in the days when anyone listening to this, Reliance was a really famous brand.
I know Reliance really well.
Yeah,
I mean, to
Brian
be fair,
Kingham and all that. It was a very, very good story of how a business grew. Like, I think they were nearly bigger than G4S at one point.
In the UK they were, I mean, I actually used to work for Securitas when they acquired Reliance. So I used to work with a few people from the Reliance days. And you know what it's like when a company acquires another company, they kind of hark back to the good old days and things like that. But I believe the technology business still exists, doesn't it?
It does.
Reliance Technology.
Yeah. No. So the nice thing about the scheme I was on is I went to spend, as part of my induction, a couple of weeks in each business. So I actually went to a prison, and because they were doing prisoner escorting and all that stuff there.
They were,
spent some time in the tech business, and it was fascinating. But I, for some reason, was put into Chelmsford. So for some reason, I said, put me in the worst performing centre. And honestly, Mark, I didn't need that.
Honestly.
I don't know how I got through it. Like,
I know how challenging that environment can be. I worked in it for years, so I get it. You know, fair play to you for...
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, I guess
there.
the story of my career, which is really like what you're asking, is doing things that other people don't want to do.
Yeah.
Learning a skill that maybe some other people take 5 years to learn. So I basically learned 5 years of contract management in about 18 months.
Well, you'd have to, yeah.
Well, because I had customers terminating, staff refusing to work, people missing payroll. It was awful.
Recruitment.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing it in a stable environment, you basically got, like the guy I had to go from basically gave me a fight, because this was paper. This was like...
Back in the day. Remember paper, people?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, when you look back at it now, I barely had a phone. I mean, it was like, and I used to drive around in my Astra. And every time, and the phone used to ring like 100 times a day, blowouts, all sorts of horrendous things, angry customers. Yeah. And I always say the funny thing is, it took 6 months of hard work to get the trust with the customers and the staff, right? Yeah. And then my phone used to ring once or twice a day, but it used to be horrendous.
Really?
So actually, 100 calls, you would be like, I could deal with most of them quite easily. But then I used to drive around my Astra, and when it rang, I used to literally just shake, because it literally was like horrendous, because you knew that call was going to be horrendous.
Really?
Like, someone's really ill, someone's died, there's always something. Yeah, crisis is going on in a team of that size. Okay, and the sort of roles those people are doing. So that was character building.
Yeah, it sounds like it probably gave you a really good grounding.
It did.
In terms of, and I mean, the one great thing I think about managing in that security environment is just the diverse nature of the people that you would be managing as well. So you're looking after so many different characters. Yeah. Probably brought on your management skills.
Well, there's a really good point, actually. So what I think about that is I was not the manager I thought I was going to be.
Right, okay. Right.
So I thought I was going to be quite a hard manager. Yeah. And actually what I learned was that I like to see the best in people. Yeah. And I think the theoretical, when you're a manager, theoretical how you think it's going to be to how it actually is very different. Yeah. So I had a lot of people that were a lot older than me. Like, I was 23, for Christ's sake. So I was like, I had to lean on these guys' experience. So there were security managers on, like, I remember this guy, Dave, in Procter & Gamble in Thurrock, running this huge factory, Gillette razors, right? £1 million a lorry. Because they used to ship them out from there. So people would wait and try and hijack them.
Yeah, they would do. Yeah.
So this security manager, like, was amazing. And he was very, very good person to learn from in terms of how he used to talk to his staff, how he built loyalty.
Yeah.
So you very much learn like what works, and I could try stuff out.
Yeah.
People took, obviously, because I would say I was quite soft. I was trying to see the best in people. People took advantage of me.
That happens as well.
So you learn the hard way.
Yeah.
I had to let a few people go. I went through the whole process of disciplinaries and all that sort of stuff. Also, people in quite hard parts of their life, like if you miss their pay, it's a massive issue.
But it is in those industries though. Yeah.
So and I think that was a real eye opener. I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw a friend of mine for about 18 months.
Right.
I didn't sleep a lot. Because security's 24/7. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that. Most security officers work when you sleep.
Yeah. They
right.
Do.
So
yeah.
I didn't think about any of that stuff. I was just like, sure, I was just going to manage some people. But
Yeah.
I learned so much about how, and that management style has stayed with me. I think.
Yeah.
That would, as you say, like it was like a forced environment to learn very quickly how I needed to get stuff done.
Well, I guess it helped you identify what your strengths and weaknesses are as well. Like quite early on as well, at a very young age, you were clearly able to identify where you were strong, where you were weak, where changes needed to be made, and so on. You know, and to be fair, I mean, like I said, I know the environment really well.
Yeah,
I've sat in some disciplinaries for some of the things security officers have done, and I ain't going to say anything, but you know, there's some interesting cats out there.
It's a tough part of society. We might come and talk about this later on, but people in those roles, cleaning, security jobs, like it's not the easiest life.
No,
right? And actually, I think that the more support and the more rapport you can build, you get more done. So I learned as a manager very quickly is to cover. I didn't want to do a shift myself because I would be doing shifts, not sleeping. It wasn't the right thing. So actually, that very much was my claim to fame in the end, was that I managed to get to the point where the team would cover.
Yeah.
Right? So we had good ways of working, good structure.
Yeah.
And all it was, and this is an underused word in management, and I use this a lot now, is consistent.
Yeah.
If I said I was going to be there next Tuesday, I was there next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right. If I said I was going to do something, I did it, or I rang you and said, this is why I haven't done it.
Yeah.
And that stays with me to today.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I could get out of the pickle I was in with the customers, is I was ultra honest about it being bad, didn't try and defend it.
Right.
And then everything I said in my plan, I did, or I explained.
You would fix it.
And that has stayed with me for 20 years after that. Well, not quite 20 years, but it's those building blocks of, and that's why I wanted to do it, learn a skill, managing people and customers in a tough environment.
Yeah.
So that was my exposure to facilities management to start with.
Yeah.
Was on that side. And my exit plan was always to go out into another part of the Reliance group. So they were like go and do that operational job.
Then
go do something else. And that's where the sales piece came in.
So because I was quite surprised when I stalked you on LinkedIn earlier and saw that you used to be in sales. Tell us a little bit about that, because I always find, because I'm in sales, obviously, so I always find it quite interesting when people with more of an operational background, because to be fair, I actually think that they're generally quite successful, if I'm honest, because they really understand the boots on the ground scenario. Yeah. What was your...
So, again, so let's go back to my whole game plan with my career was building skills. So if I wanted to be CEO of a business, I wanted to run a business, my view was you needed to be able to lead people.
Yeah.
You need to be able to run P&L. So that was the commercial side of things. And then you needed to be able to sell your business. Because actually, if you break it down, that's what shareholders want to know. They want to know that you've got a story, that you can sell it. And then the people beneath you need to understand that you can actually grow a business. No one wants to work for a shrinking business.
No.
So I was like, right, so let's go and get some sales experience. I learn from someone that does it well.
Yeah.
And I tell you, again, for people listening, if you get the opportunity to work in sales, you learn so much.
Yes.
Because like people now are like, oh, you're really good at presentations, Mark. I was like, I've probably done about 800 in sales, right? Yeah. And my first ones were terrible.
Yes.
Right? Everything in business is practice, right? You've got to have exposure and practice. Yeah. So sales was interesting for me because I wanted to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
So I moved on to the sales side of Reliance. And the CEO they just brought in there, actually it moved on quite quickly. So there was a lot of flux in Reliance at that time.
Yes.
So the next chap that came in, a guy called Paul Crilly, actually.
I know Paul.
Was incredibly supportive of this, what was I then, 25-year-old guy that wanted to change the world, which is basically where I was.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was a guy called Michael O'Hallahan as well, who'd done a lot of big outsourcing deals. So I was quite happy for a little while. I was like, look, do you know what I'm learning?
Yeah.
But then you have that moment when you realise nobody wants to buy the brand anymore.
Yeah.
Like, Reliance has had its time. And that's really difficult when you're in it.
Yeah, no, it is, yeah.
So
I've been there. Yeah,
so you're sort of sitting there and you're thinking, because again with that security job, my whole thing was when you have a bad day, why am I doing it?
Yeah.
So when I was sobbing in my Astra, which did happen from time to time, I would then be like, "You're doing this to get a skill, Mark. This is why you're doing it."
Bit of Celine Dion in the background.
So the same with sales. It's a bit of a trudge, right? Because sales, even if you're doing well, you win 1 in 3, 2 in 3 bids.
Yeah.
That means 50-60% of your career in sales is a failure, just by definition.
It's negative,
Yeah. So that's a mindset, right? So I wanted to learn that. But if everything's negative, you're not really learning. So I was but I'm quite loyal. So I was like, look, I'm just going to see this through. And then I got a phone call to go and talk to Dalkira, as it was at the time.
Right.
And a chap called Ian Howarth, who was the sales director there. Okay. And I met him, and I was just like, do you know what? I could learn a lot. This is a proper, sophisticated sales team that knows how to sell. Yeah. And I joined, and I was terrible.
Really?
Oh, God, was I bad. I probably should have gone a couple of times because it was a team of 20 or 30 people, right? And it was very much a meritocracy. So if you weren't doing very well, there was a cycle of people in and out of the team.
That natural churn.
Yeah, but I mean, you'll know this in sales, right? So you've got to get the solution right, you've got to get the price right, and you've got to get the relationship right.
Yeah.
You need all three.
Yes.
And for years, I could only get 2 out of the 3. It was always different. Yeah. Right. And I met various moments in that first 2 years.
It does take a while to click, though, I think. It's experience, Mark.
But that's a lot of it. It's an undervalued skill, sales. That's what I say. It's like, I didn't want to be the guy running one of these businesses one day and not have any empathy with the sales guys.
Exactly.
Because I think there's a lot of people that are over-judgmental of salespeople and say, it's easy. Yeah. Right. How difficult can it be?
It ain't easy.
But actually, particularly in business to businesses, which we sit in, it is phenomenally difficult. Yep. And I've got such a lot of respect for having done it for over 5 years now. But what happened was that I wouldn't say it finally clicked. I think the industry moved on. Yeah. So it went a lot less around relationship and much more on solution.
Yes.
And then so Mighty bought Dalkira in that intervening period. So I joined Dalkira, and about 6 weeks later, Mighty bought it. Right. And I'd always promised never work for Mighty. Because on the security side, they were winning loads of work off Reliance. So you sort of have this view of a brand, right? Yeah. So I was like...
I remember Mighty growing. Yeah. They were winning a lot of work off where I was at the time as well.
And they were aggressive.
Oh, very
really aggressive. And they were buying business.
Price-driven as well, very much
But it's amazing how you sort of talk yourself into like, and this is like sort of younger Mark who's like, I'd never work for them. Yeah. I remember phoning my dad like after the accident. I was like, I've got to leave, haven't I? Yeah. And he was like, why don't you just give it 6 months? And I'm glad I did. Yeah. Because that was the formative part of my career, right? So went into Mighty. A chap called Steve Foxley, who's the MD of London, picked up that whole piece. Yeah. And he asked me to be head of sales for London at 28.
Wow, that's a big responsibility.
But it was a statement for him. Yeah. It was like, I don't want to do it the old school way. I don't want people meeting in pubs doing deals. I want to do it properly. Yeah. And I want to get a reputation for coming up with really innovative FM solutions, because that was the M&E part when Dalkira was bought, but we broadened very much into FM. So we went on to do loads of cool deals, Universal Music, City of London, big M&E deal for London, as you can imagine. That was the first time outsource. And we had this really talented group of people that knew how to put a bid together, knew how to create a wow factor, and then operators that would come in and close the deal.
They could deliver.
Yeah, because what I learned very quickly was actually that was what you were getting the buy-in from the client. Really, was that the operator was actually going to stand behind it and deliver it.
Yeah, I say that all the time. You know, you can't. You know, my view on sales, and I've had this for years, there's no point me sitting in a presentation talking to the client because I'm not going to deliver it. It's the operator that will deliver it. So it's really important to entrench that relationship at the early stages, you know, rather than just that salesperson that's going to do it and then bugger off.
Yeah, and also I think it was a good assessment in terms of, like, I had some true salespeople in my team that were natural sales guys. Just get out of the way. Yeah. Like my job, that was the first role, and I've had many others after, where I was building a team. Yeah. Rather than being the main sales guy. Because I think, again, in sales, you're good at sales. Yep. People promote you to manage the team.
They do.
That's not always the right answer, because actually great salespeople tend to be a little bit more mavericky. Yeah. They tend to work better on their own.
Disorganised.
And they need support structures around them to be successful.
They do.
Suddenly you give them 4 other salespeople with the same behaviours, you put stress on them. So I learned a lot from that. Right. And that's why I ended up staying in sales for longer than I thought. I thought I'd do a couple of years to learn that skill. Learn how to present, learn how to do commercial negotiations. Yeah. But I quite enjoyed it. Right. And when you're on a bit of a wave in London, we were winning stuff, we were building something that was a bit different. Yeah. I ended up staying in that for 5 years,
Wow. And then you transitioned back to a more operational role.
Well, then I was a little bit unsure what to do, because by that point I'd done my people management, sales, bit of marketing. Yeah. So then I really needed some, like, more senior ops, I guess.
And how old were you at this stage?
Just late 20s.
So still very young, really, in terms of your career. Yeah. Okay.
So, so then there was some, but this is a good thing, right? So when you're with a company for a few years, so I had some credibility in the bank with Mighty.
Yeah.
So there was a couple of people that then sort of started, and this is what I think happens really, is you get to some point people create a role for you.
Yeah.
If you've got that credibility in the bank. So there was a role in a business that we'd acquired, which needed a bit of technology we needed bringing in, but that then morphed into a transformation director.
Oh, really?
Role.
Right.
Because from a top down, Mighty were looking to be more efficient and all that sort of stuff. So I ended up with this really random, cool job where I was like transformation director for Mighty Technical Facilities Management, which is 4,500 engineers.
Yeah.
And a team of like 12 people again, where it was like IT people, never managed IT people before, but that was all like the Maximo CAFM system type setup.
Yeah.
And some change people. So I had some classical change roles, and I was very much learning from this central team of management consultants that were theoretically applying models to our business. And my job was to say, right, well, actually, do we think we can get to those efficiencies? How do we deliver those programs?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Really?
But it means you really go under the hood of a business, because you have to look at the people, the systems, the processes.
Right.
Did a lot around Lean Six Sigma.
Yeah.
And again, not an expert in any of these areas, but very much exposed, learn, listen, pick these things up. And then my job in that situation and then following my career is bringing it all together.
Yeah.
So how do we build a team to deliver that vision?
Yeah. So you're like a conductor, basically.
Yeah.
You've got the woods, you've got the strings, you've got the brass.
Yeah.
You're bringing it all together and trying to make some beautiful music, as they say.
So that job was really interesting, and actually became really important to the job I'm doing now, because transformation skills, change skills are
significant, required.
Are quite difficult to find at scale, because normally people don't get that level of exposure at that age again. So I'm still in my I'm sort of 30, 31 here, director level within Mighty, which was good.
Yeah. And also a lot of responsibility, Mark, on young shoulders. So to kind of delve into that, especially for people that are listening that are looking at senior roles at a young age, how did you cope with because look, there's pressure, there's stress associated with it. How did you cope with that? Did you have mechanisms that you would use?
That's a good question. So, I mean, funny enough, one of my coping mechanisms was, no matter my worst day in some of those stressful situations, was never as bad as being a security contract manager. So that would immediately calm me down. I would just take myself back to my Astra, where I was like, right, it's not as bad as that.
I'm not in the Astra, it's all right.
But a lot of it's around your support network, right? So this Steve Foxley chap I mentioned, sadly died about 18 months ago, bless him.
Right.
But he was a safe space. And I think, again, something people don't realise is that you don't have to be a superhero.
No.
You have to have your safe spaces. So I knew anything I said to Steve wasn't going to go any further.
Yeah.
He would challenge me back in a safe environment.
Yeah.
And you basically have to find those ways of switching off. So for me, it was playing football at the weekends.
Right.
Being with my mates at the weekends.
Yeah.
And then being strong enough to be wrong. So that was very much something that I had to work on, was this, like, because I've got quite a strong personality, there was a view that actually once I'd spoken, that was it. Right. Especially when you're in a position and people are like, oh, there's a young guy, he's in charge, obviously knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So I had to constantly at the start of the meeting say, do not assume I know anything about this.
Yeah.
Right? Please ask questions, check, because I am going to say stuff which sounds like I've made my decision.
Yeah.
It's just my style.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because actually, strangely, that worked, because people are like, oh, right, okay, so he doesn't know the answer. Right. But then you have your detractors that are like, well, why doesn't he know?
Yeah.
So you've got.
You're always going to get that, though.
So what I learned on that was, who's your actual support network that are on your side, and who are the people that you have to listen to. Yeah. But you don't get too caught up in that, because otherwise you can second guess yourself.
Well, you can also take it personally, can't you?
And that's the problem.
And, the reality is, I think that's the difficult bit.
Yeah.
Not taking things personally in a professional setting. Look, I've never led teams like you have, but I have led teams in the past. And it's I think it's quite important to sort of disassociate yourself from that if you can. But that's difficult. That's a tough thing
and that's why you need these safe spaces, and you need stuff that's very much like outside of work that's not related to that. Yeah. Because otherwise, I think your ego can overtake a little bit.
Yeah, it can.
And I think that was always what I was very aware of, is I didn't want to become arrogant. Right. I think there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance.
Agreed.
And actually being a young director. Yeah. Big team. So my next job within Mighty was for another 120 people. Right. But energy managers, BMS division. Yep. Energy Bureau in Northampton, which used to be called Utilix. So that was my next job. That was Operation Director of Mighty Energy. And that was tough, because then you're dealing with people that are what I would call classically trained. So they've come up through engineering apprenticeships and qualifications. And actually, when somebody then head of your team, you don't have that same connection to say, oh, well, they were a great engineer or they really know energy management. How do you build that rapport and respect with a team? They're like, well, why are you doing the job?
Yeah.
You know, that's quite an interesting thing, especially when you're a young person.
Yeah, very much so. So going back to Steve, would you say that Steve was a mentor at those early stages of your career? And how important to you was that at that time? Was that something that you felt you really needed? Did you go out and pursue it, Mark, or was it something that just kind of naturally happened? And how, I get kind of a 3-part question here, I suppose, and how beneficial was that to you and your career?
Oh, massively. I mean, so there's a couple of things there. So I was thinking about this. I'm not sure everyone understands the difference between mentoring and coaching.
Yep.
Right. So coaching, just to be clear for anyone listening, is very much about people asking you good questions and you find the answer yourself.
Yes.
Mentoring is very much about giving people the benefit of your experience.
Yes.
So it's much more directive, much more, I would do this, I would do that.
Yeah.
I'm not a great coach.
Right.
I'm a decent mentor.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think coaching is different skill sets. And similarly, at different times in your career, you need different things. So Steve was a mentor.
Right.
He was very much like, don't do this.
Yeah.
Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Can I borrow you for 5 minutes? What on earth are you doing?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Like, not,
you can pick up the phone.
Not like, how do you think you could have handled that better, Mark? You know, like, it's like, that's a very different thing.
Yeah.
And actually, so for that first couple of roles, that was very, very important to me in terms of like, so because he used to say to me, you used to be a terrible poker player.
Yeah.
Because I can just see the steam coming out of your ears. And
Really?
he would say it over and over again until I developed that ability, where actually someone at Capita then said to me, you never seem very ruffled. I was like, Steve would be delighted with that.
Yeah.
Because it was a skill set I had to learn, which was, again, it comes back to this consistency bit. Never being massively happy and massively sad.
Yeah.
Like, no team wants that. No one wants to come in and see what mood's he in today. Like, good news, woohoo! And bad news, this is awful. So actually, Steve was great at holding that line. So when something good happened, he would come up a little bit. When something bad happened, he would go down a little bit. But you always knew what you were going to get.
So do you think stoicism is something that's helped you then? Because
resilience.
That's kind of what it is.
Resilience is the word. I think one of my key attributes is resilience.
Right.
And I think I learned a lot of that from the security contract manager job.
Yeah.
And it's probably hard, coded in my DNA as well. But being resilient to get up and go again, getting things wrong, having another crack at it.
Yeah.
Being strong enough where someone says to you, that wasn't good.
Yeah.
Have another go.
Yeah, the ability to make mistakes.
The ability to make mistakes in a safe environment.
Yeah.
Is important. So I think that was really important. But then strangely, actually, I needed coaching.
Yeah.
So my transition from Mighty to Capita was about I'm not stuck, but what like I was 33 or something.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there thinking, well, like I think I've probably done what I need to do at Mighty.
Yeah.
Mighty was going through a lot of change.
Yeah.
The CEO was leaving and all the stuff's coming in. So you sort of think, right, now's the right time to go off the bus. So that's where I use coaching to be really clear in my mind what I was going to do next.
Yeah, but that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Nobody said that to us before. So
No.
you kind of wanted to invest in your career yourself. So you went out and searched for ways to develop yourself externally as opposed to...
I think what I wanted to do, and again, for people listening, for me, is like, you've got to view your career in stages. So for me, 20 to 30 was skills acquisition.
Yeah.
30 to 40 was about bringing it all together.
Yeah.
And starting to make demonstrable impact.
Yeah.
And then the next phase of my career is going to be about that more scaled up version of that. So how does that become much more productionized, more political, more policy driven? How do we make real changes in the industry?
I have to say, Mark, I absolutely love that breakdown. What a fantastic breakdown. So anybody listening, really take that on board, because that is that's the best way I've heard it espoused. It's probably the best way.
But Mark, everyone's in a rush in careers, right?
Yeah.
So I was thinking about coming to this podcast. It's like, I want that job. I want that salary.
Yeah.
It's not about getting to 100 grand. It's about staying there.
Yes.
And even more importantly than that, it's not all even about earning 100 grand. Like everyone, when I talked about it, it was about, I want this director job, I want this. The biggest question is why?
Yeah.
And that's why you need coaching, right? Because actually, you don't have that long on this planet in the grand scheme of things.
No.
Not everyone's born to be a leader. Not everyone's not born to be a CEO. You want to get to a job and you want it to be sustainable. And that might mean it takes you 10 years to get there and someone else takes 5 years.
Yes.
It's not a competition.
No.
Right?
True.
Actually, it's a long career, 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
Everyone's always in a rush to be a director by 30, do this by 30.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily willing to make the risk. So the reason I would say that I transition relatively quickly is I took jobs, as I said earlier, that people wouldn't really look at.
Yeah.
So I've been head of sales for a business, M&E business.
Yeah.
A, I had to be given the opportunity, but B, I had to want to do it.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
That security contract manager, a lot of people at that time were like, why are you doing that, Mark? You're taking a sideways step for the same money.
Yeah.
You're going to lose your life for a year or so.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? And I was like, big picture.
Yeah.
I want to bring all these skills together at some point. I don't know what job, I don't know what it is, but ultimately that was the plan.
Yeah.
Rather than I want to be this MD by 25, I want to be that by this, I want to be earning this money by that. I think if you're good at what you do, you build that skills, the opportunities will come.
Yeah.
I generally believe that, and it's been proven that way in my career.
Mark, I want you to coach me, mate. Honestly, I swear down. I really do. I really love how you articulate how your career's transpired. Obviously, now you're with Elgin.
Yeah.
And I know that's you've been there quite a considerable period of time in various roles. How did that come about, and how has obviously your career's developed? How have you developed that career?
Yeah. So. The Capita stage was quite interesting for me because when I was at university, Capita was seen as the big outsourcing dream.
Yes, they were.
New labour and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So I was like, I'd always wanted to work for Capita because outsourcing, strangely, being a bit of a passion of mine. Sounds like a strange thing to say, but I found it quite interesting.
Yeah.
So I saw the job there.
The first time we actually ever interacted, Mark, was when you were at Capita.
Really?
Yes, yeah. We interacted over LinkedIn many, many moons ago.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. That's mental, that, when you think about it.
Well, it's a small industry.
Yeah.
Which, again, I mean, we might have time to it's like, I think that the brand you build, you never know where you're going to meet people again.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's what I'm quite conscious of in this role I'm in now.
Yeah.
And not everybody that listens to this might agree with that, but I try and be incredibly fair.
Yeah.
And accessible.
Okay.
Because you never know what job I'm going to be doing in 5 years' time. Right?
That's true.
So,
yeah.
I think it's really important to do that. But yeah, the Capita job was hard.
Really?
Yeah, because I think it was one of those jobs where I wanted it to be something that it wasn't.
Right.
And again, it was joining a business in that part of the cycle where they're on the downturn.
Yes.
A bit like when I joined Reliance, Capita had its time.
Yeah.
So effectively what that job became was a close down of the property management function.
Wow.
I joined on day one and very much realised that the investor clients were moving out. And that, interestingly, so this links into a question about LNG. It's like, when I was at Mighty, I'd sort of seen that, because I'm big passionate about smart buildings and doing things in a different way.
Yeah.
Pension funds have money.
Yes.
So I was like, how do I get into the pension fund industry? So I saw that Capita role. I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. Managing agent, learn how to be a managing agent. So I joined as like operations director. Within about 2 months, I was managing director of that business, which had about 100. Wow, it was 300 people in total. About 100 of them were on-site people.
Right.
About 100 of them, 150 were surveyors.
Right.
And 50 or 60 facilities managers.
Yeah.
And that was tough.
Yeah.
Because basically we lost all of our business. So that business went from 300 people to about 30 in about 12 months.
That must have been tough.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah.
And we had our second child in the middle of all that as well.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
so it was tough. But do you know what? Look, life is what you make of it.
Yeah.
So again, going back to what I said earlier, my head was like, the reason I've done this job is because I want to get access to the pension fund industry.
Yeah.
I want to change the proposition and I want to learn how to managing agents work.
Yes.
So no matter what was going on,
Yeah.
I got real exposure to service charges, really understand what surveyors do, property managers, listening to clients about what had gone wrong and how that might work.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, again, and this is why you can't plan your career too much. I will still remember the email popped in from another part of Capita, the customer service part, and they were like, we've met this client, L&G, and they want to do something completely different with their property management business. They think the answer is something to do with facilities management and smart buildings. Can you come and meet them with us? And that was the start. So got in a room with L&G and they were like, look,
really,
we don't want to just be a passive investor anymore. We want to be an active investor. We've got a lot of ambition. So Bill Hughes, who heads that business up, was very, very articulate, actually, in the States Gazette or EG, of saying he wanted to make it a customer-focused industry, which means they had to be less passive as a landlord.
Yeah.
Effectively, that's what my part of the business is. It's not corporate L&G. It's all the investments. There's 750 properties across the UK in about 20 different fund structures.
Wow.
Everything from hotels, build-to-rent residential blocks, to shopping centres, to offices, everything.
So a very diverse portfolio.
Very diverse portfolio.
Yeah.
And pension funds are very relaxed about collecting the rent.
Yes.
And letting JLL and Savills and people manage their portfolio.
Yeah.
Bill was very clear, and this is what in change you need it as a leader. I want to change.
Yeah. And
I want to take that 3 or 4 year cultural journey that goes around that.
Right.
So I didn't meet him immediately, but I remember meeting his team. And I read that article and I was like, if we can get this to stand up, I can bring all of my ideas here. and it brings facilities management into the strategy.
Yep.
Because with surveyors are very much classically trained around RICS.
Yeah.
Facilities management is something that's often under-resourced, under-understood.
Yes.
Supply chain relationships are quite homogenous, one size fits all.
Yeah.
So we came up with this strategy called Mercury, and then the Capita piece was sort of getting to the end of its life.
Right.
And I sort of said to L&G, do you want me to deliver it for you?
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing.
So you kind of created a role for yourself.
I did, yeah. But that is what I did at Mighty.
Yeah.
And that's what I did at L&G. So you could argue I had to have the opportunity, which is very true. Like I think a few things had to align there, but also I had to see it. Yeah. And I think that's the thing is like when you're building your career, you've almost got to work out when you're getting your head down to get a skill.
Yeah.
And when you need to get your head up and say, right, now I'm ready to take that opportunity. Even if it doesn't like tick all the boxes, which it probably didn't for me because I was joining as a consultant.
Yeah.
And
of course,
that was the first time in 10 years I hadn't had a team for over 100 people.
I bet that was weird.
It was very odd.
Yeah.
I used to come into the office and basically like,
what am I going to do today?
I just like, there's only so many times I can rework this PowerPoint. So I know what I want to do. I'm very action orientated. Yeah. But I still had to go through all the process of getting people on board and taking people on a journey.
Yeah.
Classical change sort of theory.
So you kind of built it from...
Yeah, but it's amazing what it is now. So like we have literally completely turned it on its head. The Mercury model is about how do we work together. So there's 30 asset managers that are Elgin and they've all got their own business strategies. Yeah. And what we very much said is that each building is its own business.
Yes.
So there's about 300 of the 750 that are quite passive. They're like long income, like Amazon warehouses and stuff like that. But the rest of them, they've got their own story. So we had to surface our brand. We had to be really clear what we're doing on that industrial estate in York versus that office building in Bristol. Right. Build the supply chain around that. Yeah. And 100% it's all culture. Yeah. If our asset managers didn't believe in it, then they wouldn't spend time with the people that we put in place. And then our partners, so our main partners in this area are JLL, Savills, Bellrock, Workman, and then Urban Bubble on the residential side. Right. And they've all bought into this way of working, which is very much data-led. Yeah. So I have 2 data science guys in my team. We send out the performance measures. Right. So we do KPIs quarterly, but monthly we do a look ahead and says, this is how we think that asset is performing. Right. Okay. So the granularity is there. Yeah. And what people say to me is that working in this model, the transparency is quite tough to live with to start with. Yeah, yeah. But when you realise that actually you're never going to get in trouble for telling us the truth, you get these amazing emails. So like on the offices, which is where we started the scorecard, so there's 42 multi-let offices across the UK. It's like a monthly finance report goes out. Yeah. It goes to the asset manager, the service delivery manager at Bellrock, who was a role we invented. Yeah, I'll come back to in a second. Yeah. And then the property manager, which is your classical surveyor. Right. They all get that email at the same time. And a lot of the measures cross-connect. Really? And now, 3 or 4 years on, naturally they just jump in. So when it's their issue or it's them, they'll just come in onto the loop. I'm copied onto every single one and they'll say, actually, this is with me, I need to do this or I need to do that. Or I might jump in and say, what's going on with this? And I don't get a defensive question. I just get, look, I can't get X, Y, and Z to do this. And I was like, well, do you want some help? Or like the culture we've created around performance is special. It's really special.
It sounds to me, and correct me if I've got this wrong, but it's like you've created a competitive nature within your organisation.
Exactly what it is.
In a healthy way, not because sometimes competitiveness can be healthy and it can be non-healthy depending on how it develops. But to me, it sounds like what you've done is create a scenario where these guys are like, right, I want that this month. Our building's going to be at the top. We're going to do X, Y, Z to drive that forward.
So we have league tables in regions. We have all sorts of competitions between the teams so the Bellrock team is 42 people now, building managers, facilities managers, these SDM roles. Yeah. They only work on LGIM funds. Right. Okay. So, because in the managing agent world of facilities management, normally you have like one for FM across 20 buildings.
Usually,
Royal London, Aviva, LGIM in the past. And that's not fair because the property managers normally are quite account allocated. Yeah. The FMs are like geographically allocated.
Yes.
They have limited control over the supply chain. Yeah. Because they have to use these national frameworks. Yeah. And therefore, it's a tough job.
Yes.
Now, I mean, I'm not saying we're perfect, but what we've built within our FM function is that freedom within reason around supply chain. There has to be a logical reason for it.
Oh, of course, yeah. Without doubt.
But we've gone from, when we moved it all over, 63 suppliers to over 200 now.
Wow.
Because we're really driving an SME piece as well. So where we've got, particularly around landscaping, some cleaning, trying to drive some local businesses into the supply chain and support their growth. Yeah. But I think, what makes it special is that the PMs stay as well. So the property managers, the surveyors are very much like in my other customers. Yeah. Well, I have to accept sometimes they have other customers.
Yeah, of course,
we oversee all the facilities management, all that sort of stuff. In Mercury, I can just do the strategic piece. So they still have to deal with service charge, but they are much more advising the asset managers in terms of net zero carbon, what we're going to do around expenditure on the building, lease management. That's very much in our world. Yeah. So I see our property managers as being the creme de la creme of property managers. Right. So I want to be famous in the industry where you get more time with asset managers, more time on the strategic stuff. Yeah. And similarly with FM, like we should be, in my mind, a training factory for the industry, because you come in and you get time with asset managers. Like we've basically equalised those roles. So this service delivery manager is like an account manager in facilities management world. So they're a layer that manages our FM. So we still have FMs, right? But they have a peer relationship with the property manager, and the asset manager. So they live in this triangle. So they have their calls together. In the early days, they used to take each other off emails and transfer each other under the bus. Yes, but they don't do that anymore, because what I've said to them is, the LGIM asset manager, you're the leader. So you have to have the behaviours and principles that you are going to support your team. Yeah. And honestly, Mark, it is amazing. Like, I have to be honest, I love that. It's so cool. Yeah, it sounds really cool. But LNG had to give me the time, because any cultural change... It takes time. Takes years. Yeah, of course it does. And COVID accelerated it, actually. Yes, yeah. But forming relationships, and I look at now, my big test is, why does someone leave our portfolio? Yeah. So like exit interviews, I always ask the people, not direct, but like the companies, give me a good explanation. Because if we're losing people because they're getting paid for a couple of grand, that's wrong. Yeah. If the job's not challenging enough, that's wrong. What on earth are we doing? If we can offer someone a career opportunity, maybe that's fair. Yeah, because ultimately we can't keep everyone happy. We can't. No. Not when you're talking about an organisation at the scale you're talking about. You know, you can't. It's impossible. Does, from a training perspective, Mark? Because I'm guessing, does this build into churn? Do you do quite a bit from a training perspective to develop your guys? Yeah, no, we do. I mean, formal training is very much down to the individual businesses. Right. So we obviously we manage them as a group. So I have a leadership group of JLL, Savills, Workman, Bellrot, Bubble people with specialists my side. So our team. So we very much run it as like, this is how we want to run our portfolio. Yeah. But that's blended with their own training programs and their. Like, I need to allow those companies to differentiate, right? Yeah, of course. It's that healthy competition, because everyone, like Bellrot know if they're not performing, JLL, Savills and Workman can do FM. Yeah. And similarly, Workman know that JLL will be more than delighted to take a fund off them. Yeah, so, of course. Because we've got these different entities and it's such a big portfolio, you can do these really cool things. Yeah. So training we lay over the top tends to be more around our ambitions. Yes. For net zero carbon. Right. And and social value is the big one. We've done a social value framework this year. Yeah. And we had to have 5 or 6 calls with 50 or 60 people on each to train it out. Right. Yeah. So it's cool. Like we've got this really cool structure now where people are really responsive to LGIM. And that it goes down to supply chain level. So we have an annual supplier conference, which I go to for 2 days. Yep. And that's the opportunity for our suppliers to talk to us as a team, explain what they're thinking, where things aren't going so well. Yeah. Because I'm very conscious around things like payment days, like debt. Like I want us to be, and we are very good in this area, but we're not perfect. No. So I need to hear what's actually going on. So that you can make the so we can be supportive. There's no point having a supportive culture where your suppliers feel like they are treated as a third-class citizen. That's not what we're trying to create. Yeah, it's really interesting. It sounds like a really cool place to work, actually. I've got one of the best jobs in the world, generally. Like, so is this the retirement place? Is this the rest of your career, or are you going to get that? I was hoping you weren't going to ask that question. That itch at some point in the future where you want to take on something a little bit more challenging. Do you know what? I think it would have to be some job to replicate what I've got here. Yeah. What's your views on it? How do you see it evolving over the next 5 years? Yeah, I mean, that legislation is going to have to get tighter around the E in ESG. So, agreed. Already in the investor market, you're seeing smarter investors wanting to see data, granular data. Yeah. We're very much talking about walking the talk. Yep. So it's all very good to have a policy, but what you're actually doing and demonstrate. So I think we have that conversation all the time, myself and Ethan. But the market dynamics in my part of real estate are driving that, right? So actually, offices is something that people are always down about. Yeah. But people still want to rent high quality, sustainable offices. Agreed. Right? And my view is that ports into pretty much any property type, but particularly industrial. If you can walk into one of our industrial estates, plug in, sign a PPA, and buy your energy from us, and you've saved carbon straight off the bat. Yeah. That's a premium rent potentially, but also a long-term retention piece. Agreed. But also for both parties reduces our scope 3 emissions and their scope 1 and 2. So there's some really nice dynamics coming, which I think Legislation will be a bit slow on. I think market forces from investors are going to push us there quicker, which is good news. And LNG is a responsible business. Yeah. S is harder.
Yes.
Because I think S is different to every organisation, strangely, depending on which part of the market they're in.
It's subjective to the individual, isn't it?
And always people try and, what I would say, do great case studies rather than proper change at scale.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's great that you helped, I don't know, somebody back into work that might not have had a job. That's great. Can we replicate that across the UK? How do we make that a movement that other people then buy into? How do we do things that really do improve people's lives?
Exactly.
And hidden workers is probably the thing I'm most proud of in that space, where I don't think many companies would have backed me on that as much as they have. So this is about...
When you say hidden work, so
this is an initiative we launched about 18 months ago, which was around trying to give a bit more focus on cleaning, security, landscaping, front of house roles. Sort of post-pandemic, how do we support people in those roles a bit more?
Yeah, I like that.
And then from my days as being a security contract manager, where I could see the lack of sick pay was pretty horrendous. Like people dragging themselves into work, not being able to do hospital appointments. There's some pretty scary stats around life expectancy in this area, which have really driven. Yeah, like if you're in one of those roles, bus driver, cleaner, security officer, your life expectancy would be about 10 years behind you and I.
Really?
Yeah. And there's a number of things.
That.
Yeah. Well, you think about it: long shifts. Poor sleep. Poor nutrition. And then access to healthcare. If you've got to choose between going to work and feeding your family and going to the hospital to get diagnosed, you're not going to do it.
No.
So there's some really horrible stats about stage 3, stage 4 cancer in those groups, because people don't get an early diagnosis.
Right.
So we did that report. I sort of knew it was going to say something along those lines. We did some in-depth interviews.
Could you share that with me?
Yeah,
I would love to see that report. I really would.
It's been a really interesting area. So then off the back of that, we made our commitments in our supply chain. So we've dropped waiting days, pay sick pay at normal pay, and then we've introduced via our partners access to GPs through apps, mental health services.
Yeah,
a lot of this stuff was already there, Mark, but it hadn't been rolled out to the front line.
Yeah.
So actually working with a number of our partners has been brilliant. So we're close to 1,000. What I would call families, but individuals that work in our supply chain that have now got those benefits.
Oh, well done. That's brilliant.
So,
well done.
Yeah, that's been my proudest achievement this year. And it's a proper S.
Yeah, it is.
It's a proper S.
It makes a real difference.
It makes a real difference
to real people,
well. Yeah.
You know, in real scenarios. Because, I mean, we chat about this quite a bit, you know, in how can we make a proper difference? And, you know, we've put some great initiatives in place, but they're real, you know, day-to-day initiatives, not... you know, just doing something for the sake of doing it, you know.
Well, and this is, I think, with our ESG teams, and I really like this, it's like doing something that wouldn't have happened without us.
Yes.
So it's like not just saying we're doing things or supporting things with the stroke of a pen type of thing.
Yeah.
Where do we actually have to move politics or infrastructure? Because sick pay, it's really interesting working with the Safe Sick Pay campaign. It's watching how it's going through the politicians.
Yeah.
So Amanda Walters, who runs that campaign, has met with Jeremy Hunt to talk about how that might work.
Yeah.
And obviously with our support, we're showing it's possible to move in a different direction around that. So I'm learning a lot around how that engagement piece that you can we've helped 1,000 people so far maybe, but really I want to be able to help a couple of million people in the UK that don't get sick pay.
Yeah.
And that's by collaborating with different businesses.
Right.
So actually my job's become much more around that. How do you build coalitions of people around certain things, either internally or externally, to make things happen? So climate change and hidden workers are two good examples of that.
I completely think that's the way to do it. You know, I mean, we have similar conversations. You know, I do think that that's definitely the right attitude, the best way to go about it.
Yeah,
but really interesting. I'd love you, like I said, I'd like you to share.
Yeah, share that. I mean, anybody listening as well. There's quite a lot of material on this now. What I need is companies to do the right thing.
Yes,
like there's not a really strong argument not to do sick pay now, because the financials are reasonably 1 or 2% of a contract value. It's more the mechanism of how do you manage it, covering shifts that the industry needs to think about. But we've had some really good engagement in that area in the last 12 months. I'm really pleased.
Okay. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, look forward to that. Okay, so technology. It's been a massive part of your career by the sounds of it. What do you see the future of AI being? How do you think that's going to impact what we do?
So my fundamental issue with this area is that the FM industry is a terrible process at the moment. Right. So lots of data in different spots, in places.
Yeah.
I mean, M&E is an example. People still phone home desk saying they're too hot, too cold, and an engineer gets dispatched.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the machine learning, the blockchain, the AI type stuff comes in if the environment is pretty immature.
Yeah.
So yes, I can see a place for AI, and we're going to pilot some things, and automation will come in terms of how we have a whole program called Symphony.
Yeah.
But my principle at the moment, as it stands, is I want to give the engineer the right tools to do the job.
Yes.
Rather than automate them out.
Right.
So, do I spend a lot of time thinking about AI in facilities management? Not at the moment, because I think we've got some fundamental building blocks we need to sort out.
Yeah.
How we think about managing buildings. How we front that up and explain like the carbon footprint. Air quality is a great lens to manage buildings through.
Yes.
Slowly getting there.
Yeah.
Obviously, 10 years ago, I thought we'd turn the corner. Still turning that corner.
Yeah.
But moving from classical measures that we've got now to more strategic measures will allow things like AI and some of the cool tech that's coming down the road to be truly transformative. But I think we've got too much bad process.
Yeah.
In particularly M&E at the moment.
Right. Okay.
As I say, I'm always open to learning on these things. But that's, as it stands today, I find it difficult when I see a lot of tech to see the use case actually playing out at scale. In one building.
Yeah.
But everything for me is about how does that affect 20 buildings? How does it affect 100 buildings?
Yeah. Well, I think the issue at the minute, it doesn't really talk to each other, does it?
No,
I mean,
exactly.
there's no, I mean, if you're a building manager, for example, you've got multiple portals that you log on to manage your cleaning, your security, your this, your that. I mean, that one space where everything's in, an easy to use scenario would be quite useful. But
exactly. And AI needs like common language, indexing of buildings. It needs to understand the patterns.
Yeah.
I get that AI is going to work with unstructured data, but if a lot of stuff in the database is either wrong, or not hinged against, not interrelated, you've got to be able to get that stuff in a reasonably similar place. And again, somebody listening to this might disagree with me, and I'm quite open to those ideas. But what I'm working on in our portfolio is very much about standardization of data sets, getting really bright people to start making decisions. So we can move into more bespoke maintenance strategies, for example, in that area.
Yeah, of course.
And then I think you can overlay automation, AI, and get really clever.
Okay.
But I think we're a step before that, really.
Right. Okay. Really interesting. Yeah. Okay. So, tell us a little bit about yourself outside of work, Mark. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about you. What do you like doing?
So, I have a lovely family. So, wife Rachel, 3 boys: Alfie, Jake, Teddy. 8, 6, and 3. So busy. A lot of football. I'm a Crystal Palace fan.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. Season ticket holder. So that's been really good. I did that when I stopped playing football, actually.
You beat City last weekend, didn't you?
Drew.
No, it was a draw, wasn't it? 2-2.
But I mean, it's not a great season for us. But we have these moments where we outperform, really. But
yeah.
That's that. Yeah. So I like going to Palace. And I used to play. I used to be a goalkeeper. I used to play a lot of football. So
any good?
No. I mean, this is like Kingston District League standard, but. Funnily enough, like I joined a team that didn't have a goalkeeper and we went on to win a load of things.
Really?
So it goes back to my theme about work, is I'm a team builder, I'm an organiser, I get stuff done.
Yeah.
So I joined that team in Division 4 in Kingston, we got all the way up to Division 1.
Oh, wow.
And then we won about 3 or 4 cups, and then everybody left because it got too hard.
Oh, really?
So then we got relegated again. It went from being social football to being like we need to train. Like young guys coming along, pinging balls all over the place.
Semi-professional.
It all got a bit too difficult. But so I watch Palace now. Love my boys. My wife's fantastic. She's very much part of the community where we live. So I'm also chairman of the Scouts. First ones were Scouts.
Right.
So my time, that's another real benefit of work for L&G, is that work-life balance is pretty good.
It is.
Yeah, like I see the boys, like I travel once a week for work, probably a night away.
Right.
And the rest of my time is with the boys, with Rach, doing normal stuff.
Yeah, just pottering about.
Yeah. But I think that's important because there's a danger that you could, like I always worry I'm not spending enough time on certain subjects, but there's a worry that it could consume you. And go back to your question earlier on, I'm no good to anyone if I'm completely zombified by stress.
Exactly.
Right. So you've got to have the compartmentalisation again, which is something people have to learn. You don't just come out of university or go into a senior job and just know how to compartmentalise.
No.
That's again something that needs to be worked on. Mentoring is good for that.
Completely agree.
How do you switch off? What are your triggers to switch off? Changing your, like I always like put my jeans on when I go home.
Yeah.
And as that's almost like a signal to me, like I'm now at home.
It's trackies for me, but trackies and a t-shirt.
There's all sorts of psychology around that switch off between work and home. And I think it's important to learn that earlier in your career because it only gets more difficult. Yeah.
I mean, the great thing for me to switch off is my wife still has absolutely no idea what I do for a living.
Oh, no. My wife, if she's got this far on the podcast, I mean, she's done well to get that far. But she is amazingly supportive of the things I need to do in my job.
Mine as well, yeah.
But ultimately, if you said to her, "What do you do, Mark?" I think she would say quite a good opening sort of elevator pitch. But but I love that, right? It's not about me. Yeah. It's about like us as a family.
Yeah.
And actually, what I do is great, and I couldn't do it without her taking the slack with the boys in school and stuff. Yeah. But ultimately, we're a team.
Yeah.
And I don't think she needs to know the intricacies of what I do.
No, my wife just goes, "You sell things, don't you?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, Mark, I have to be honest, mate. I think we're going to have a part 2. I think, that was such an interesting chat. But obviously, we're time limited. We've run out of time, but I'd love to invite you back again in 6 months to do a part 2.
Yeah, if I can help.
But listen, thank you very much for joining us. A really informative show. I think that a lot of people are going to get a lot of assistance from some of the things that we've discussed today. Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, good. It's always nice to share thoughts and opinions. Like last thing I maybe say is that there is no right way. Right.
Very true.
The nice thing about careers is you can look at people and you can say, "I like that about that person.
Yeah.
I want to learn that, and then I'm going to add it to something I like about that other person. I'm going to do that."
Yeah.
So I don't think there is one right way. My career path is relatively unique in some ways, but there's a lot of common themes around building skills, building relationships.
Yeah.
Taking chances.
Yes.
And being quite resilient. So but I don't want. There is no one right way.
No,
they've got to find their own path.
Yeah, they do. And to be fair, you're going to make a lot of mistakes on that path at the end of the day. It's about picking yourself up and then pushing forward, isn't it?
Look, I think that ability to know when you've made a mistake and not being proud to say that.
That's the key one, actually, because a lot of people don't know. They're like, "Nah, I'm not wrong. No, I was right." But that ability to self-reflect, look inside yourself and go, "I probably handled that the wrong way." I think is an important skill.
And I think what I've learned over the years is reading the room as well, where you can see on people's faces if you're going in a slightly different path.
Yeah.
And sort of over time you sort of learn to go, right, okay, well, I'll think about that again.
Yes.
Let's part that. We'll come back next week and have another conversation on that.
But that ability to be flexible, though, and actually read a room, that's an important skill as well. The ability to recognise probably need to go down a different route, and then change on the fly is,
but that comes with experience, right?
Of course it does.
So knowing how teams work, knowing how businesses work, you don't just wake up one morning and be able to do that.
No,
you've got to go through the period of experience, making mistakes.
Yep.
It's great. I mean, I really am passionate, particularly in facilities management, to see more people trying to do non-classical things. Like if people want to be leaders in businesses, you have to do something that makes your CV stand out a little bit.
Agreed. Yep.
Obviously, sales is an under realised skill.
Yeah.
Like if you just break sales down, it's relationships, it's commercials, it's presentations.
Yeah.
Any senior leadership needs those skills.
Oh, of course they do.
And sales, you learn it quickly because you do it week in, week out.
Yeah.
And you either fail and you learn to get up from it.
Yeah.
Or you win and it feels amazing.
Exactly.
And that is a lesson for being senior leadership.
I mean, there is absolutely no feeling like winning a contract.
No, absolutely.
And I get the same excitement now that I did back when I was 18 when I got the first contract that I ever signed.
Oh, that's cool.
You know what I mean? And I literally do. And for whatever reason, I just feel exceptionally proud of myself, which is really bad actually, to be fair. But I do. I'm like, yes, I get really excited.
But you've got to celebrate success.
Yeah.
You've got to recognise when things. But as you said, you've got to learn how to pick yourself up.
Agreed.
Yeah. There's so much out of your control at work.
Yes.
That you can't always legislate for what's going to happen next. So you can have a best guess.
Yeah.
If it doesn't go your way, make sure you understand it. If there's things you can improve, great. If not, sometimes these things are not meant to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Listen, Mark, absolute pleasure. We'll definitely get you in for a part 2.
Okay.
Listen, I'd like to thank Mark for joining us today. That's another episode of Wear Many Hats. Look out for this. Well, Mark's second one, actually. I think we'll do that in about 6 months. But thank you for joining us again, and we'll see you on the next episode.